Let's go back to that time, before the turning point. You were talking about you were overweight, you were talking about your eating habits, you were talking about a lot of stuff that you were doing. You were also talking about the fact that you'd read a lot of self-help books, and it's interesting that you brought up that you read a lot but didn't implement. And a lot of times we like to call that shelf help. It's kind of you get the self-help books,
Yeah.
put them on the shelf, and of course they're going to magically help you. So either point you want to talk about. Let's dig a little bit into either, maybe what led you. Was there any key thing that led you to being overweight and what you learned from that, or from the self-help industry? Was there any key thing that led you to want to read a lot but then not implement?
I'm sort of addicted to information. I think was part of the problem. Even like right now, I've got 300 videos saved on Facebook to watch. They keep popping up, reminding me, like, that's right. um, and I've kind of always been that way. So I like to, I love getting information. I actually, about a couple of years ago, I decided I'm going to stop buying books because I don't read them most of the time anyway. So just not going to just keep hassling with that. And I have to make it something. If I do get one now, it's got to be something I really really am fired up about. And even now, I've got like 2 or 3 books that I'm reading right now that I'm kind of going back and forth on them and stuff. It's not really my best way of taking in information. I think it's probably part of the problem.
Yeah.
And so, what's that?
No, I was just going to ask you, do you think that part of what it could have been was or is the fact that's number three? I need a little counter, like the little hands on
Yeah.
Blab. I need a little, dink. Um,
Right.
do you think maybe it's because that the self-help industry, our industry, has for years told people they need to read books and they need to do this, and has really put this stress, the fact that if you're not reading and you're not learning, then you're not growing, and that it's such a thing that it's always pushed, to read more. In other words, even John Maxwell talks about the fact that he knows people with big TVs and big libraries, and there's kind of this thing where it's the people with big libraries are smart, and they earn more, and the people with big TVs just sit in front of them and veg and that sort of thing. But do you think that had anything to do with it? The fact of this general notion that you have to read more and you have to read, and I'm using that word specifically because we'll talk about why in a second. But do you think that had anything to do with it?
Absolutely, and we're constantly told that anyway. I mean, you hear like I don't know. I think I remember reading somewhere that Bill Clinton reads a book a week or something, maybe 2 books a week or something. They talk about all these successful people and how they read so much, and so you go, well, if I want to be successful, I've got to read a lot. Um, and yeah, I mean, and everybody writes. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I wrote a book, so because you have this information and you want to get it out to people. And I think sometimes that's just it's I mean maybe it's the old standby of the way to get the information out to people. But yeah, that's like I said. I mean, we always hear that successful people read a lot, and I would love to have. I want to have somebody that's highly successful tell me they've never read a book. That's what I want to hear.
Well,
I don't know if that's a great thing, but
yeah, well, and see, here's the interesting thing, and I use the word read specifically because you and I grew up in a time where libraries were a thing. I still remember going to my library after school, and it was, reading, you wanted to, whether your teachers or or the successful people, you were pushed to read. And that's because a lot of books didn't come in any other form except printed material. So the challenge becomes for people who take in information differently, and this is one of the golden nuggets that I wanted to pull out of the beginning phase, is the challenge that comes for people who take in information differently is sometimes people will feel bad about not reading, and they don't think of all the audiobooks they listen to. Like I used to talk about not reading a book in like 20 years, and then I realized, I've got 100 audiobooks that I listen to, but it's kind of, it's where you go, okay, yes, I consumed that book. And that's one of the things I wanted people to really pull out of this section was, both Jim and I and a lot of people who watch Expert Showcase, view and consume information in a different way. So if you're out listening, would you agree with this, Jim? If they're out listening to audiobooks or watching videos, it's just as good as consuming and reading, physically reading the book?
Well, it's funny you mentioned it because as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh yeah. Well, I mean, I'm listening to audiobooks all the time, right? So I'm listening to Think and Grow Rich on my phone. In fact, you can download and listen to you on your phone. And I've tried to read the book a bunch of times, and I get stuck somewhere, and I just put it down and never go back to it. And so I got the audiobook now. So yeah, I think when I was teaching also, we always try to find different ways of presenting the information because not everybody's going to get the information, take it in that easily that way. So the more you can mix it up, and the other thing too is from a learning standpoint, if you can consume it in multiple different ways, you're going to retain the knowledge more as well.
Yeah, definitely. So then, one of the things that it sounds like one of the things that got you from having just shelf help to actually getting into and understanding and starting to learn more about, the industry and things you could do is switching the way you consume things from trying to force yourself to read something to, to listening and watching videos and everything. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Well, at least you did a lot better than I did. I remember I never liked reading books in high school, so I would just try and read the minimum amount of pages possible to pass the test, and it served me very, very well until one time. And I think I failed one test in high school, which was kind of ironic because I was in the top 1% of my class and all the other stuff. So the teacher's looking like, "Did you actually really take this test?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just never read the book." But so give me something I can watch or give me something I can listen to. But that's besides the point. So you've got, so do you think, let me ask you this question. Do you think that if you would have switched from trying to consume the self-help books in written format to a different format sooner, do you think it would have helped your life? Do you think it would have helped you get thin? Do you think it would have changed your life in any way if you would have done it sooner than you did?
Possibly. There was also still, and I still don't know the answer to this one, but there was still a lot of that. Well, I'll tell you one thing that I will say helps. Just reading, just getting that knowledge in. I caught it from Chris. Excuse me. Is mindset, things like that. Looking at different viewpoints. But a lot of the things that can be really helpful are actually taking the action. And boy, I got to tell you, I still don't know if I would have taken action like you got to do. I mean, you can't. For a lot of those things, you can't. It's like you can't learn to play guitar by reading a book.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So regardless of how you consume so I think, and I'm going to wrap up the beginning by saying this. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like the biggest learning you got out of the beginning phase of your life before it got to the turning point, before it got, bad and that sort of thing was that if you could look back now, the biggest learning would be take action. Just don't consume the information, but take action on what you're seeing, reading, and hearing. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and I think so many of us, I still find myself doing this sometimes. Is we spend so much time. Let me just give you an example, a quick example. So I need to make sales calls for my business because I also do comedy hypnosis. And so I have to call venues up and solicit them to do my shows, for me to do my shows there. And so I kept looking at videos online. Grant Cardone, he's awesome, and I think there's a lot of good information there. And I'd read stuff on the internet about how to do it. And I feel like I just had to, if I just knew this one little secret, whereas really the real key secret is make 1,000 phone calls and make 100 phone calls because that information is great, and to a certain extent, I think it's great to get the information in, but you just got to get out there and do it at some point.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people fall into that same trap of, just feeling that the next book they read, the next piece of information they have, the next that's going to open up the world. And what they don't realize is that next piece of information may never come. And if it does, it'll come a lot quicker through the trial and error. And we can do a whole, we could do a whole show on. Well, I think we could do a whole show on a whole, multiple hours on that. So let's dive into the next topic and the next area, which is the turning point.
To watch the rest of this epic episode now, click on the link below the video. Do it now, you'll be glad you did. Are you still here? What are you waiting for? Watch the rest of this epic episode now by clicking on the link below the video.